They locked me out of my email before I'd even had my first coffee. No warning, no meeting, no explanation. Just a cold system error when I tried to log in. Then an email from IT. Your access has been revoked per executive instruction. And just like that, 17 years of loyalty? Gone. No goodbye. No thank you. Just silence. I walked past my desk already boxed up. A junior associate I'd trained just last month. Avoided eye contact. The HR manager whispered, "It's nothing personal." But if it wasn't personal, why was I being blamed for the failed contract I begged them to handle differently? They didn't just fire me, they rewrote the story. Suddenly, I was resistant to change, not aligned with new values. Meanwhile, Jack, the new CEO, strutted through the halls like he owned the place, calling me a legacy liability. He smiled like cleaning house made him some kind of hero. My name is June. I was the one holding our international partnerships together. Until they decided they didn't need me. This story, it might make you angry. It might make you proud. Maybe even a little vindicated. But before we dive in, grab a cup of tea, turn up the volume, and tell us where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it right now? We want to see just how far these stories can travel. By the time I cleared out my desk quietly like a ghost, Jack Mendez had already replaced the department head with someone from his old startup circle. He called it modernizing the culture. What he really meant was, loyalty didn't matter. Experience didn't matter. Only his people mattered. He didn't even know most of our names unless we had a blue check mark on LinkedIn or Forbes 30 under 30 in our headline. On his first week, he held a town hall. He smiled too much. Used buzzwords like lean teams and agile transformation like he'd just watched a TED Talk the night before. He didn't ask us how we got here. He told us who we were going to be under his vision. And when no one clapped at his restructuring roadmap, he paused, chuckled, and said, "Don't worry, change is uncomfortable but necessary." That's when I knew. He didn't see us as people. We were just obstacles, or efficiencies waiting to be gained. He started with the mid-managers, mostly women, mostly over 40. They disappeared one by one, some without even a goodbye email. "They just didn't scale," he said once, chewing a $16 poke bowl, while one of our best logistics leads cried silently in the break room. Then came the subtle digs. In a meeting, Jack referred to legacy knowledge as a risk. Another time, he joked that anyone still using Outlook rules probably needs a tech upskill plan. I had built our entire APAC partner system around those very rules, but I smiled and nodded like the rest, even when he laughed at things none of us found funny. My favorite on Friday, he told a junior analyst loud enough for the floor to hear that some people just coast in roles for decades, clinging to invisible value. I was walking by. Our eyes met. He didn't blink. I knew he meant me. But what Jack didn't understand, what he couldn't begin to see, was that some roots grow so deep, you don't even realize they're holding the whole thing together until you cut them. The following week, the Gold Bridge tech file landed on his desk. The biggest account in our portfolio. He scheduled a light-touch strategy review. No one looped me in. I wasn't invited. But that was okay, because by then the cracks had already started to show. And Jack. He was too busy breaking things to notice what was quietly falling apart. Jack didn't fire me right away. That would have been too simple. No, he erased me first. Quietly. Like a ghost file. No one opens, but no one dares delete. I first noticed it when I wasn't copied on the Gold Bridge emails. Then came the new communications workflow doc. A third-party firm out of Newark had replaced my name. They weren't even fluent in Mandarin. One of them misspelled our client's name in the subject line. Twice. For 17 years, I had been the bridge. Not just the translator, but the voice, the tone, the nuance that made our international partners trust us. I still remembered the first Gold Bridge deal. The endless late-night calls. The tea gifts. The contract clauses with handwritten clarifications. Those things built trust. And trust built millions. But none of that showed up in a KPI dashboard. None of it fit Jack's polished PowerPoint slides. During one meeting, someone asked who'd handle the Q3 renewal discussions. Jack waved it off. "We've got vendor coverage for that." Vendor coverage, that was me. That's all I ever was to him. Later that day, I overheard him in the break room laughing. "We'll finally get some fresh air in here," he said. "Clear out the cobwebs." The cobwebs, he meant people like me. Older, quieter, seasoned. We didn't speak in buzzwords. We didn't repost leadership quotes on LinkedIn. But we were the ones who knew where the risks lived. Then came the real insult. A junior hire accidentally forwarded a Slack thread to me. Jack had typed June's just legacy overhead. "She'll retire soon anyway." Let's not waste strategic cycles on sentiment. Sentiment. That's what he called relationships, context, and respect. I sat at my desk, the city lights blurring through the window. Hands on the keyboard. But I didn't type. I just stared. Not because I was hurt. Not anymore. That part had already gone numb, but because I realized something deeper. Jack wasn't just burning bridges. He didn't even know they were there. The next morning, Gold Bridge Tech requested a meeting. Just a check-in, they said. But they asked for me. Specifically. And that's when I knew if they hadn't already noticed the cracks they were about to. And I wasn't going to lift a finger to stop what came next. The day after that Slack thread, I got a message from Mr. Liang Goldbridge's vice president. It was simple. Just one word lunch, no explanation, no subject line, just that. He didn't need to say more. We met at a quiet Korean spot near the financial district, the same place where we'd celebrated the original deal almost 10 years ago. He didn't bring his assistant. No agenda. Just tea. A long silence. And then finally, "Why are you not on the renewal file?" I smiled politely, took a breath, and said the only thing I could, I wasn't invited. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Your CEO does not understand relationship equity." No anger in his voice, just quiet disappointment. He tapped his fingers softly on the table. He sees money, not context. Structure, not respect. I nodded. There was nothing to defend. He already knew. That evening when I got home, my inbox was full. Not from Ridgemont, but from LinkedIn. Industry peers had noticed the shift in our partnership. They were curious, concerned, inviting me for coffee just to catch up. The silence around my exit hadn't fooled everyone. And then 2 days later, a call from an unknown number. It was a recruiter from Lawson & Reed, a consulting firm I'd once presented with at an APAC conference years ago. They'd heard I was transitioning. Wondered if I'd consider advising on cross-border partnerships. I hadn't even updated my resume. Meanwhile, back at Ridgemont, Jack was pushing the new team to finalize the Gold Bridge renewal. But what he didn't understand, what he never could understand, was that in that culture, silence doesn't mean compliance. It means caution, distance. A polite way of saying, "No thank you." Jack thought everything was going well because no one had said otherwise. No red flags in his inbox. No tension he could measure. But when you fire the interpreter of a relationship, you also cut off the ability to hear the warning signs. I watched quietly from afar, sipping tea, scrolling through the news, knowing something Jack didn't. Gold Bridge doesn't negotiate through Slack. They negotiate through trust. And that trust, it had just walked out the door. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday. 10 Zadsho a.m. sharp. I wasn't invited, of course. But I knew exactly when it would begin. Because I had once set that recurring calendar block myself year after year to honor the partnership review ritual with Gold Bridge Tech. Back then, we opened those meetings with green tea and a moment of shared silence, out of respect. Now Jack opened with a joke about chopsticks, then launched into a PowerPoint, bar graphs and buzzwords flying across the screen. Global Synergy, one slide screamed in bright red letters. Another promised cost efficiency via outsourced translation. He didn't even bring an interpreter. Just Martin, fresh out of B-school, fumbling through Google Translate on his phone like it was some kind of charades. Carla, the new account manager, nodded enthusiastically every time Jack spoke, even when the partners stared back in silence. Mr. Ling sat still, arms folded. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smile. But I could imagine what he was thinking. Jack talked like volume meant clarity. Faster, louder, more assured, as if confidence alone could close a deal. At one point, he leaned forward, grinned, and said, "We're excited to evolve this relationship into something more scalable." Scalable. That's when I knew. It was over. Goldbridge wasn't a SaaS client. They didn't want speed. They valued ritual, patience, cultural rhythm, and none of that, not a single piece, fit into Jack's metrics. The meeting ended 15 minutes early. No agreement, no formal goodbye, just a stiff nod from Mr. Lang and the quiet shuffle of expensive shoes on marble as the delegation walked out. Later that day, Jack stood in the middle of the floor, loud enough for even the interns to hear, and said, "Smoothest negotiation I've had in months." He laughed. Martin high-fived him. Carla posted a selfie on LinkedIn winning global, but inside the partner channels, silence. No replies to Jack's follow-up email. The renewal contract, untouched. And across town, my phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Ling. "Thank you for the lunch. Your tea recommendation was perfect." That's when I realized they had replaced me with a PowerPoint, but the connection I built that was still brewing. And the next move would be mine. 2 weeks after the failed Goldbridge meeting, Ridgemont's silence turned into whispers. Rumors swirled. The deal was off. The CFO looked pale, and Jack stopped strutting down the hallway. And then out of nowhere, my phone rang. It was Jack. He opened with fake cheer. "June, how are you?" As if we were old friends. As if he hadn't humiliated me in front of half the company. I was thinking he said maybe there's a way we could bring you back in. Informally, of course, to help patch things up. He didn't say it directly, but his voice was tight, desperate, the kind of panic that leaks through polished words. I paused, let the silence stretch, just long enough. Then I said, "Let's meet." The next morning, he arrived 10 minutes late to the cafe I had chosen. His suit looked more expensive, but his eyes gave it away, less fire, more fatigue. He sat, leaned in, and started pitching. No titles, no commitments, just strategic support, just temporary alignment. He never once used the word mistake. I listened, then said calmly, "I'll consider it. But on my terms." He blinked, caught off guard. Of course, he stammered, but I could see it. He still thought he was in control, that I'd be grateful for a way back in. What he didn't realize was I never wanted my old job back. I wanted something bigger. Clarity, leverage, a quiet path to precision. That afternoon, I drafted the consulting agreement myself. No HR signature, just Jack's initials on a line he didn't read carefully. A clause that gave me limited access to client communications and transition files. He saw it as a formality. I saw it as an opening. So I returned. No desk, no welcome party. Just a sterile glass cubicle wedged between 2 departments, an afterthought. Jack waved from the hallway like I was an intern. I smiled back as if nothing mattered, but inside I was already planning the first call. Not with Jack, not with the team, but with the one person who had always seen through the noise, Mr. Ling. And this time, it wasn't business. It was a reckoning. My new cubicle had glass walls, no privacy, no nameplate, just a small desk wedged between marketing and legal, a placeholder for someone they hoped would vanish quietly. I didn't mind. It was the perfect vantage point. People forgot I was even there. By noon on my first day back, I had access to the client's CRM. Jack had signed the consulting agreement without a second glance. The irony. The access he gave me was broader than anything I'd had before. He thought I was a tool for damage control. What he didn't realize was I'd become a mirror. That afternoon, I called Mr. Leang. Not through the office line. Not through email. A direct call. His voice was calm. But I could feel it, the pause, the quiet weight of judgment. I apologized, not for leaving, but for the silence that followed. He said one thing before hanging up. Some bridges aren't broken, they're just hidden under fog. In the days that followed, I didn't sabotage a system. I didn't leak a memo. I didn't whisper a word of gossip. Instead, I met with 2 former partners, off the record, just coffee, soft conversations. I didn't pitch, didn't brag. I listened, and I told the truth. That Ridgemont had cut ties with the very people who held those relationships together. That their replacement strategy was built on buzzwords and billing hours, not understanding. That the new team confused efficiency with empathy, and lost both. They heard me. Not with applause, not with promises, but with slow nodding silence. Meanwhile, inside Ridgemont, the atmosphere shifted. Emails went unanswered. Client meetings got rescheduled. The Singapore agency botched a time zone coordination for a live presentation. Twice. Jack blamed it on global misalignment, but the silence was growing louder. Carla began calling old contacts, the ones who had stopped responding. Martin drafted apology emails that sounded like press releases. The interns started asking questions and no one had answers. And Jack. He just smiled wider, louder. As if pretending things were fine could somehow make them real. But I knew better. You don't need to break a system to bring it down. You just stop holding it up. And soon, the cracks would be too wide to ignore. It started with a missed wire transfer. Just a small one, $12,000 for a supplier in Seoul. But it was enough to set off a quiet chain reaction. By Friday, a senior partner from Munich postponed their annual check-in. Too much instability, he said. Then came the call from our Australian client. They were reviewing their vendor alignment strategy. Code for, "We don't trust you anymore." Inside Ridgemont, Jack kept smiling. He hosted all-hands meetings and tossed out phrases like, "We're evolving and rebuilding from strength." But I saw the truth behind the eyes of his shiny new hires, nervous glances, fake confidence fingers drumming during calls. The center was crumbling. One morning, Diana, the head of client success, an old colleague, pulled me aside near the elevators. "They're cutting 2 departments next quarter," she whispered. "Budget's been slashed, and Jack's blaming Gold Bridge." I just nodded. Jack had tried to plug the leaks with spin. He called our lost clients outdated, framed their exits as strategic realignment. But the truth, it was bleeding through the walls. Every partner that left pulled another thread loose. The board took notice. They summoned him for a closed-door meeting on the 15th floor. The glass around that room was fogged for hours. When Jack came out, he didn't speak. His jaw was tight. His usual swagger gone. I walked past him in the hallway that day. And for the first time, he looked at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me, and I saw it fear. Because he knew. He knew the collapse wasn't loud, wasn't sudden. It had been building, quietly, from the moment he let the wrong people go and trusted the wrong ones to replace them. And me, I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't taken revenge. I just stepped aside and let the rot spread. But even that wasn't the end, because the honest reckoning, it hadn't even begun. Jack requested the meeting, not through email this time, through Diana. "He wants to talk," she said quietly, almost apologetically. "Just you and him, no one else." I agreed. Not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted him to look me in the eye when it all finally clicked. We met in the same conference room where he once smiled as he dismantled everything I built. Same chair. Same cold ceiling light. Same glass table reflecting just how thin his power had become. He arrived late again, but slower this time. The sharpness in his walk had dulled. His suit was still expensive, but the lines on his face told a different story. "June," he said, forcing a grin. "I appreciate you taking the time." I nodded, said nothing. He jumped in, rehearsed. "We've had setbacks, transitional challenges, but I still believe there's a path forward if we collaborate. No apology, no ownership, just more buzzwords, more spin." I listened, hands folded, eyes steady. And when he finished, I asked, "Do you even know what you lost?" He blinked. "You lost trust," I said. "You lost the people who held this place together when no one was looking. You replaced relationships with metrics, respect, with noise. And you're still trying to fix it without admitting you broke it." He looked down. For the first time, no rebuttal, no joke, just silence. "You called me legacy overhead," I continued. "Said I'd retire soon, but I didn't disappear. I just stopped holding things up." Then I leaned forward. "You want me back, but not to fix what's broken. You want me to shield you from the fallout." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I stood up. "I'm not here to save you, Jack. I'm here so you know who watched it fall." And as I walked out, I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. Because some collapses are loud, but the ones that hurt most are the ones that leave you in a room full of silence, realizing you built nothing worth saving. A week after that final meeting with Jack, I submitted my formal resignation from the consulting contract. No drama, no explanations. Just a clean, quiet exit, exactly how I wanted it. That same afternoon, I signed a long-term agreement with Lawson & Reed. Not just as a consultant, but as head of strategic partnerships. Full autonomy, full respect, and a salary that didn't just reflect my experience, but the value of what I'd built across borders, cultures, and decades. Meanwhile, Ridgemont's unraveling couldn't be stopped. Goldbridge made their new alliance with us public. 2 other former clients followed, citing trust-based continuity as the reason. Investors began pulling out. The board moved quietly to replace Jack. His LinkedIn went silent. He had underestimated me. Not because I was loud, not because I played corporate politics better, but because he never learned how to see people who didn't demand attention. He confused quiet strength with irrelevance, saw experience as a threat, and respect as optional. That was his biggest mistake. I didn't just get a new job. I reclaimed my name, my purpose, my narrative, and the most satisfying part, I didn't need revenge. Because real justice doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it's just watching someone finally face the weight of what they chose to ignore. Sometimes it's sitting in a sunlit office sipping tea while an email rolls in from a partner who says, "We only trusted you all along." That was enough. And maybe that's the lesson here. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never assume the people who don't shout don't know how to lead. Because sometimes it's the person you dismissed, the one you called outdated or invisible, who ends up building the future without you. I've moved on. But the message stayed. Respect isn't optional, and those who underestimate quietly competent people, they usually end up learning that lesson the hard way. Subscribe to catch more inspiring stories. Because sometimes the quietest people carry the sharpest truths and the most unforgettable comebacks.